Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. So welcome again, everybody. It's very lovely to have this sort of joint evening session between the two monasteries here in the San Francisco sort of Bay Area and north a bit. We're in the middle of a heat wave here. It's quite hot still. And so I think it feels really quite timely to me to have this theme this evening of, what was it? The value of equanimity. Equanimity has a sense of a coolness, perhaps, a calmness. My teacher, Luang Por Ganha, would say that he has the AC in the heart, referring to the equanimity of one who is free from suffering. And there is this quality of coolness, isn't there, to the word nibbana, which has many meanings. The goal of our spiritual endeavors, nibbana, it means many things. No knots or no winds blowing, some interpretations of the meaning, but it also was a very common word, apparently in the time of the Buddha, that was used to refer to food that needed to cool down. Food that's being left to cool down is being left to nibbana. Nibbana. You take the food off the stove and it starts to nibbana. So actually there's that connotation of coolness that would have been meaningful for people listening to the Buddha when he referred to the end of the path, the goal of the spiritual path as this cooling down, chilling out, losing the heat. The heat can dissipate. So I feel in relation to this quality of equanimity, there is this sense of just allowing the heat to dissipate. How do we do that? On a hot day, we're going to be hot. When, things around us are provoking, our, reactivity can start to manifest and we can get very hot, but we don't have to. We can have a very hot day, but we don't have to suffer from the heat. We don't have to suffer from reactivity, which is kind of like, isn't it, if there's a bonfire over there somewhere, it's kind of like going close to the bonfire and maybe even adding a bit of fuel. This is reactivity for us, and we don't have to do that. We can actually step away from the bonfire, and we can even, if we're very adept, we can put a bit of water on the fire. We can try and cool things down. So these abilities we have through our practice. And for me, this opportunity to consider equanimity and its value, it's very present when we meditate, isn't it? And we've just had a chance to sit together and to cool down. So what happens when we meditate? Oftentimes, isn't it, we'll be aware, we'll become aware of the things that are sort of festering in the mind, the things that are churning around in the background, the issues of the day, the slights and the little offenses that are taken here and there, the little disagreements here and there. They're all sort of stowed away if we're not able or quick enough to drop them on the spot. then they can sort of build up and accumulate to some extent, can't they? And then we sit and meditate, and if we're meditating skillfully, paying attention to just what is present now, then the mind has some space and it has a chance to sort of, come back to the knots, the tangles, the hot spots, the issues that are not fully resolved and that haven't fully found their peace. And isn't it interesting? It's first things first. Whatever's bothering me most will come up first, and then we'll be sort of cooling down, and then something else, some memory of this or some slight over there or some misunderstanding. And these things will just tend to come up, and we don't pay attention to them. If we're wise, we don't really give them much importance. We simply continue to notice the breath, the body, whatever our skillful object of meditation might be. And so the mind can start to dissipate that heat. It can start to nibbana. And so it does. So it does. And then after half an hour or so, sitting together this evening, the gong goes, and here we are. And it's oftentimes after a meditation session, there's a feeling of, yeah, I've been able to let go of this or that. I feel cooler. I feel more peaceful. This is an experience that we have of equanimity. It's a result, isn't it, of our practice. And it's very interesting that, the Buddha spoke about equanimity in all different ways, in all different kind of paradigms. There's the Brahmavihara's paradigm. Equanimity is the kind of culmination or the completion of love, the most mature, holistic, unconditioned, free, and divine experience of love is equanimity. And that's very interesting that it should be so. And then we have the 10 parami, and again, equanimity is the culminating factor. It's the 10th virtue. So we could say equanimity is also the culmination, the completion, the fullness of merit, of goodness. And then we have the 7 bojjhanga, the 7 enlightenment factors. And again, equanimity is the 7th of the enlightenment factors, the culmination, the completion, the fullness of enlightenment. So it's really interesting that this quality, it comes in all these different groups. It's a virtue, it's a form of love. It is love. It is enlightenment. It is the experience of somebody who's free from suffering. And fortunately for us, the Buddha gave us so much guidance around how to develop this quality. In some sense, when we look at looking at the enlightenment factors, it's almost the sense we get is that it's a natural result of our practice. It develops as we develop on the path. And yet we can also put in effort and cultivate this quality. Don't we just have endless opportunities to do that? And this is where equanimity can be a virtue for us, to bring it in as a wholesome kusala karma, bring it in to bring goodness into the field. Endless opportunities, day to day, when we could react, we could get into some kind of a dispute, however subtle, some kind of an argument with reality, and we refrain. We consciously step back and we bring in this quality of equanimity. I'm not going to I'm not going to get drawn into this. I'm not going to react to that. I'm going to do my best. And if there's no sort of positive direction happening here, I can step back. I'm going to step back. I'm going to disengage skillfully, turn my attention elsewhere. In these ways, we cultivate equanimity in our day-to-day life, don't we? And such a beautiful quality. And of course, it's a significant manifestation of the divine abidings of the Brahma Viharas. It is love to be able to not create more trouble. How loving is that? To be able to be calm. And it's interesting to look at the four aspects of love, divine abidings, unconditional love, love that is free from desire, free from attachment. You know, we have metta, karuna, mudita, upekkha. And metta has this, it's like the benevolent gaze, isn't it? The kindness, the willingness to hold in regard all things without it making any discrimination, any distinction between this and that. There's just a kind, receptive kind of warmth of regard, metta, loving kindness. And then compassion, karuna, gladness, mudita. These are like two aspects, aren't they, of love in relation to the situation, the world. Where there's suffering, karuna manifests, that which trembles with, that which is empathic, that which is sympathetic. And mudita, that which rejoices in the good fortune of others. So they're like two sides, aren't they, of the possibilities, really, manifesting around us, two ways to for love to kind of radiate forth, depending upon whether there's happiness or whether there's suffering. But then upekkha, this manifestation of love is so complete and so full. What is it? It's the recognition that all beings are the owners of their karma. There is a bigger picture. When we can step back from the small, parita citta, the small mind, and open to the bigger picture, how else can we relate? Only through equanimity. You can see. It's the seeing that, or the understanding that all beings are the owners of their karma, cause and effect. Why does this happen? Because of a reason. There's a cause for everything. And so when we can appreciate cause and effect, we're free from reactivity. Because how could it be otherwise? How could things be happening in any other way than the way that they are happening? So there's this open, unargumentative receiving of reality. And it's a bit like, for me, considering parents, with young children, there's the love that's just unconditional regard that is metta. There's the care when they're suffering that naturally generates karuna. There's the rejoicing in the well-being and the good fortune of the children, mudita. And equanimity, it's like the wise parent who can stand back and allow their children to grow, to learn, to make mistakes, to be free, to live their lives. This quality, so precious in the world. And so in all these ways, we can consider equanimity. It's loving, it's virtuous, and it's free. It's free, it's enlightened. It's the bringing in of the light, in a way, in the ways in which we relate to the world, to bring in the light, to not make a problem out of anything, to be able to be present. There's that element, that aspect of equanimity for me, which is, it's like the opposite of indifference. It's so not that. It's quite other. Upekkha can sometimes maybe even look like indifference because it's calm, it's peaceful. There's no obvious shake or quiver there. But it's the opposite of indifference, isn't it? To be equanimous is to be very present, very fully here. And we can only be very present and very fully here when we are equanimous. It enables, doesn't it? Equanimity enables us to be sensitive. It enables us to be able to be with the difficult, be with the painful, be with the repulsive, the disgusting, the ugly, and so forth. And of course, to be with the beautiful, the desirable, the attractive, and in just the same way, not to get drawn in, either to the pleasant or to the unpleasant. It's that which does not shake, does not quiver, the imperturbable. There's a lovely sutta in Majjhima Nikaya. It just comes to mind, the imperturbable sutta. I think it's called Anenja Sapaya Sutta. I don't remember the number. But the Buddha talks in this sutta about the imperturbable. And one can compare this to the teachings on equanimity. And in so many ways in this sutta, the Buddha talks about how we can observe reality and how we can develop this quality of unshakability. And he talks about the 4 elements, this beautiful way of considering this body, this material world. If we can consider this experience of embodiment in terms of the 4 elements, it's a very helpful and supportive way to enable us to let go, isn't it? And to develop equanimity in relation to this one, this vehicle, this form that we somehow feel like we're in it, or it's part of us, or we're observing it. But here it is. How to relate to it with all its aches and pains and its great rushes of emotion, its hot and cold, its unpredictable nature, its aging, its hunger, its thirst, the fact we have to constantly tend to it, wash it, take it to the toilet, feed it. Today in the heat, we've been filling our bodies up with liquid. It's just an endless job, isn't it, to look after this form. And so how to relate to it skillfully. And this way, this method to consider the 4 elements, it's so helpful for us, because then we're looking at it, understanding it, experiencing it in terms of qualities, aren't we? The quality of solidity, the solid parts of the body, the shape of the body, the weight of the body, earth element. So we can really, we can spend time just really investigating this quality right here. And then the water, the fluidity, the cohesion, again, the shape of the body, the air element, the movement, the breath, the vibration, the sensations, pulsations, all the movement of the body. And fire element, the temperature, hot and cold, here and there. We can really divide and dissect and consider the body in these ways. And we can also bring in space element, can't we? The places, the caverns, the cavities and caverns in the body, the spaces in the body also we can consider in all these 5 ways, these 5 elements, this physical form. And what does it do for the mind? Well, it helps us to release the sense of ownership, doesn't it? The sense of me, the sense of mine. Because, of course, we can see, as the Buddha said in many suttas, that these 5 elements are to be found in everything around us also. Every body, every object, every material aspect around us. It's the same, they have the same 5 elements. So which bit's mine? What's inside and what's outside? Does inside make it mine and outside make it not mine? But there's a constant interchange going on. I'm constantly putting stuff in from out there, and stuff in here is going out. So there's this flow, isn't there? And we can just really allow the mind to begin to consider, to begin to appreciate what is hard for us to appreciate, which is that there's nothing personal here. This is just part of nature. It's subject to the same laws of nature. It's made up of the same qualities. And so we can start to let go of the sense of me and mine. And as we let go of this compelling delusion of selfhood, so we can calm down, we can cool down, we can nibbana, we can develop equanimity. We don't have to worry about it so much. And didn't the Buddha say, we can get to the point where even if someone were to come along and threaten this body, harm this body, that we could appreciate, well, this is just an event that's happening here. Can my mind remain calm? Can I dwell in the Brahmaviharas, even in the midst of some threat, some harm, some danger to this body? And the Buddha said, of course, this is what we should do. This is how we should develop our understanding. And didn't he say, you're not following my teaching if you don't have a peaceful mind in the midst of any kind of physical threat or harm? So this can feel quite challenging for us, but it's only challenging our delusory sense of self. And so it's good, isn't it, to be challenged in this way and just to consider how challenging, yes, to appreciate that this sentient form that's so sensitive, that's so vulnerable to pain and suffering, that feels so much close and so much mine, that actually all of this sense of ownership, sense of intimacy with the body has to be let go of. And so we can begin to open to this and to consider, and how important, how helpful to meditate. Because as we meditate, yes, we can appreciate, we can contemplate the 4 elements, we can appreciate the changing nature here, and we can appreciate the lack of any kind of control over this form. And slowly but surely, we begin to disentangle. We begin to see more clearly. We begin to develop this beautiful, peaceful quality of equanimity in relation to this form. And also in relation to the mind. Our work is to appreciate the Buddha's teachings around perceptions, around thoughts, around consciousness. Again, perhaps even more convincingly mine, belonging to me, my thoughts, my views, my opinions. But, we can appreciate the Buddha's words and investigate these processes through our practice, how these aspects of reality also come and go, constantly changing, not very trustworthy, not very reliable. If we identify with these aspects of reality, thinking, perceptions, consciousness, if we take refuge in these, what's it like for us? Very shaky, isn't it? Very unstable, scary even. And it's very difficult for us to let go. But the encouragement is there for us, isn't it? And the results can be felt, can be experienced. Every time we have an emotion, I'm angry, I'm annoyed, I'm upset, I'm sad, I'm fearful. Every time we have an experience, some kind of emotion that's coming through, rising up for us, and we're willing to follow the Buddha's teaching and just stay steady, breathing in, breathing out, observing from this place of equanimity, observing what's going on, not making it me, not making it mine, just allowing energy to move through. Isn't it? Every time we do this, we can appreciate, we can grow, we can cultivate this quality of equanimity. And it's cool and it's beautiful to appreciate the end of things. And then Sapaya Sutta, the Buddha's talking about how we can see cessation. When we see cessation, when experiences arise, last for a while, and then pass away, and we're watching the whole performance. When cessation comes about, we can appreciate the end of that particular Dhamma, that particular experience, that particular suffering. And what's it like? How does it feel? It's a little taste of Nibbana, isn't it? It's a coolness right there. It's an understanding that cessation is something to really notice and appreciate. When we have the experience of letting go, of allowing things to move through, of not holding on and seeing the end of Dhammas, then we can start to appreciate this path of practice. We can start to appreciate the goal of our practice. Another meaning of the word Nibbana, extinguishment. It's like a flame, like a fire, isn't it? At the end of a very hot day, the fire goes out, the sun sets, and the coolness starts to come through. Oh, how wonderful is that? The end of the day. It's very hard for people to appreciate cessation until it's experienced. One might talk about Nibbana, talk about equanimity, stepping back, seeing the bigger picture and feel, well, I don't want to let go. I don't want to let go of all the things that I care about, the things I'm attracted to, the things that repel me even. I don't want to let go of what's familiar. I don't want to let go of my habits. I don't want to let go of myself. It can feel very annihilating to consider the end of things until we've experienced for ourselves cessation of Dhammas. And so, isn't it interesting how much of this path it has to be experiential? We have to know it for ourselves. The Dhamma, inviting each one of us to come and see, to be experienced individually by the wise. No one can tell us these things, really. Like, we can appreciate the Buddha's teachings, but we have to sit and we have to meditate, and we have to be willing to take that little step back to develop equanimity. To develop equanimity at the beginning, to let it grow, and in the end, that's all that's left. How amazing. So this understanding of the wonderfulness, the peace, the bliss, the coolness of letting go, of cessation, and ultimately of nibbana. Each one has to experience for themselves. And in the experiencing of that, we can start to understand there's nothing to hold on to. There's nothing that we want to make a refuge here. Anything and everything that we think of as a refuge is shaky, is insubstantial, is frightening for us. So our path is one of letting go of what is not cool, of what is not ending, of what is not real. And this quality of equanimity, its value, can become more and more apparent to us. And it's interesting, isn't it, how people don't necessarily want peace. I find that very interesting. And I know that very well because that's what I'm like. You can appreciate how we can be so attracted to drama, to pleasure, yes, and also to suffering, to bhava tanha, in short, to being something at all, to manifesting, to existing, to making things happen, to being the experiencer of all sorts of things is very attractive. That's why we're here, isn't it? So we have this incredible attraction, incredible desire to be. And slowly, slowly, we can start to appreciate that being, that wish to be, that wish to exist at all is like burning. It's just like burning. It's hot, it's uncomfortable, it's painful. And we can only understand this, isn't it, through experience, experiencing the pain of holding on to anything at all, of making anything me or mine or permanent or important. And slowly, slowly, we can start to loosen the grip on all dhammas. And this appreciation of peace, it kind of steals upon us, doesn't it? It's something that we grow into. We learn to appreciate fading away. We learn to appreciate cooling down, stepping back. It's not a given, not at all. We can have all sorts of ideas about nibbana, about the end of the path. And oftentimes they can be tinged, shall we say, with a sense of me, with a sense of happiness, with a sense of attainment. They're even called attainments, which is perhaps a bit unfortunate, the kind of stages of spiritual development, because nothing can be attained without suffering. This path is one of relinquishment, step by step, and getting the taste for that, getting the appreciation of that, appreciating what it's like to cool down, to back off, to give up, to let go, to give it away, to be nobody, doing nothing, to be invisible. And I think you all have a sense of what I'm talking about, because anyone who meditates has the willingness. We do, don't we? We have the willingness to stop. We have the willingness to open to the possibility that there's something beyond all of this. Open to the possibility of letting go, of kind of moving in the direction of uncertainty, moving into the unknown, not allowing this rational mind to drive the vehicle anymore, being willing to get out of the driver's seat, being willing to step off the cliff and go into free fall, trusting the Dhamma, trusting the Buddha's teachings, opening to the reality that there's no one here, there's no knowing anything, there's nothing to do, there's nothing to achieve. Can we let it all go? Can we open to just this? So that's a few words on the value of equanimity. Ewan.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.